Hello, John Kennedy. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for all of that. Sorry, I'm late. Traffic and rain and Queens.
Congestion pricing.
And when you run a public advocate, they expect to be everywhere at the same time. As for those who don't know, my name is Jumaane Williams, as mentioned, council member from Brooklyn, New York. I'm in my 9th year. I just came off a race for lieutenant governor. There are some people who support it publicly, some people who support it clandestinely. I thank both of you who did that. For those who don't know, we raised about $300,000 in my race. We went up against $35 million, and we came within 6% of winning, which was, for me, pretty cool. We won New York City by 10%, which is also awesome. When I ran for lieutenant governor, I actually said that I wanted that position to be the public advocate for the state of New York. And now, because of Tish Strange's historic win, I'm going to be public advocate for the city of New York. I'm really excited about this. I think some people don't know, just so I can start from here, is people think this is an amorphous office, and it's not. It actually has very specific things that it can do. Obviously, whoever holds the office kind of molds the office. But when it first became, it's been around since about the 1890s in some form. In 1890s, it was actually president of the council, and they had some other things. In 1989, they concretized it, and the first public advocate was Mark Green, who was also one of the first people to endorse me, so I'm excited about that. But when they made it at that point, they said they wanted the office to rise above politics. That's what they wanted it to do. So they wanted somebody who would make decisions not based on politics, but what's right for the people of the city of New York. And they gave it 5 ways to do that. The first one was as a legislator, so they can put legislation into the city council and move it forward. The second was as an ombudsman, to be a watchdog over the city council and over the mayor. The third was to be a charter cop. This one doesn't get a lot of attention, which it should. Basically, the public advocate is the charter cop for the agencies, to make sure agencies are doing their charter mandated duties. And Tish James did a great job in trying to sue, but often didn't have standing. I think the charter cop is a great way to do that, because those agencies have to legally respond to the public advocate. The fourth was as a voting member of the pension board, which also is critically important, where our money is being spent and invested. And the fifth was to put people onto commissions like city planning. We all know how important those commissions are. Today, there are some areas I want to use those powers to do. The first one is deeply income targeted affordable housing. Everybody is looking for some place to live. Unfortunately, I don't think we're doing this with community input very much. What I found is that the administration often does things and then tries to get the community to get on board, where we have to ask the community to have conversations first. Whether it's NYCHA, 400,000, the 80,000 people who are homeless, we have to have a better plan for them. We put forth a plan yesterday actually. The second is accountability and transparency. The mayor that I actually happened to endorse in 2018 is not the mayor that I see now in 2018, and it disturbs me greatly. We've done a lot of good work in the police department. When it comes to transparency and accountability, we actually have not. And even worse, we see what happened with the Amazon deal, which is one of the most disgusting things I've seen in my 10 years as a council member. So I don't know where everybody stands, but I think it's an abhorrent deal, and I want to do whatever I can to make sure that it doesn't come to fruition. We give away way too much and not getting much in return. Doesn't make any sense. I actually put a bill in today with Councilman Brad Lander and Jimmy Van Bramer to try to make sure that a mayor can never sign a non-disclosure agreement again. That's what he hid behind, saying he couldn't tell anybody what the proponents of the deal was. The next is obviously our MTA. If people can't afford to get on the MTA, or the MTA is not working, we have huge problems. And I've also done a lot of work around criminal justice, which is moving in the right way. When I started about 6 years ago, people said if I did what I was going to do, the sky would crack open, people will fall from it and destroy the entire city. That didn't happen. The work we did around the abuses of stop, question, and frisk, you have to be able to stop people if you're an officer to do your job. What was happening was they were abusing it. The abuses of stop, question, and frisk, and the way we approach gun violence is different now. That was about 6 or 7 years ago. We're actually now the safest city we've been since 1951, so we're moving in the right direction. Now, if you're a victim of crime or your family victim of crime, that data means nothing to you. I always want to make sure I say that because there's real numbers behind that data. And it's critically important that we get as close to zero as we can get. And I'm running a public advocate because I have never shied away from calling out people who need to be called out. Whether it's the mayor, some people call the mayor out, if it's safe, I do if it's right or wrong. I just went up against probably the strongest person in the state, Governor Cuomo, so I was unabashed there. And even when my own speaker, particularly last term, were doing things that I disagreed with, that I think people were suffering, I had no problem calling it out. I'm proud to call myself an activist elected official, so I'm oftentimes in the streets with folks, and then I'm passing laws in the city council. And it's important to me, because I think the best elected officials are actually activists, and I have said that you can be a productive activist elected official. So I always tell folks, I've been very productive. And so today actually, I passed my 53rd piece of legislation. It's a lot of pieces of legislation, most of any sitting council member. Lastly, I think it's important to discuss identity, because we're gonna hear a lot about identity in this race. It's critically important that people see themselves in leadership, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's religion. But I often say that that can't be the only thing that we use. Because if you have an identity but no vision for what the office can be, it's no good. I think the vision is the meal, the identity is the gravy. You can't sustain yourself on gravy. So it's good to have diversity. I often tell folks, I'm a black man, I don't want people to vote for me just because of that. I'll take the votes, but that's not what I want. If you want to give it to me, I'll take it. But I want people to vote for me because of the vision that I've laid out, and because of my history on the city council, getting these things done. I was a community organizer, tenant organizer for 10 years before that, and that was long before Barack Obama, so nobody had no idea what a community organizer was. My mother thought I would never make a living. She wanted me to get a real job. I would go to rooms and say I'm a tenant organizer. They thought I was saying tennis. They asked me for tennis lessons. It was a complete crazy time, but it's a trajectory of what I've been doing. And so I think I've been a public advocate for about 20 years. And so I'm asking people like the John Kennedy Club to help me be the public advocate. And I have some identities that are important too. As I mentioned, I happen to be a black man. I am a first-generation American. I have Tourette's syndrome, ADHD. You may see me shake a little bit, but I'm okay. I'm as cool as a fan up here. And I made it through the public school system with that, from preschool to masters. My mom raised 2 knucklehead children by herself. I'm a lifelong New York City young man. So I think those are important identities as well. And I would love to continue doing the work I'm doing as the public advocate. So I appreciate your time. I think that's my spiel, and I hope to take any questions if so thank you so much.
You said you took on Governor Cuomo. On what issue was that?
On a whole issue, I know Cuomo Town, but there were a lot of issues that I felt the governor would talk about, but not really do anything about. So he put out a real good, I'm happy, list of things he wants to do now that I feel that he's been pushed to do. And now some folks don't agree, but whether it was a legalization of marijuana, we have a NYCHA issue that's a very big, huge issue. We have a bail reform that needs to be addressed. When it comes to the MTA, he's finally talking about restructuring what the MTA looks like. So there's a whole host of issues that I felt he was, and the IDC was another big one for me, but there was a whole host of issues that he was tinkering with, and generally kind of talking about when it became politically safe. But I've been a part of a group that have been making issues politically safe before they were. So I would jump on issue because I thought it was the right thing to do, not because it was politically safe. And so my position, my office and what I hold has never been more important than the people I represent. And so I'm always going to take those risks.
So you were for legalization of marijuana, making it recreational and everything before the governor was?
Oh yes, before the governor, before the mayor. 10 years ago, as soon as I became elected, I saw that there was a problem there. That of course needs to be regulated, but that there was a dichotomy in how we were doing this thing. And there was a lot of revenue we can get from it.
And you were for investigating NYCHA a long time before the governor?
I've been told, so NYCHA, this is and excuse me, like, so the governor and the mayor, there's two men who I feel are having a male measuring contest. And the people of NYCHA are suffering. Both of these men worked at HUD many, many years ago. So NYCHA is not new for them. The governor in particular was the secretary of HUD. NYCHA is not new to him. The money he promised in his campaign, we haven't seen a dime of it yet. The governor did not fund NYCHA the way he should. The mayor failed at management when it came to NYCHA and then lied about it. I'm furious at both of these men because of how they received a problem. So I don't want to, make light of it. And it's been neglected for years. But you don't make it worse.
But you called them out on this a long time ago?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, you did at the time?
No, I did before, yes, absolutely. I've never been, I've called them up lots of times.
Next.
On the Amazon deal, I know we're giving them money, but they say in the long run, that money will be in taxes and jobs and all things it'll bring, will be a good deal for the city that, as bad as it was, maybe they should have gone through the council and through everything, but in the long run, the jobs will pay, make it a profitable situation. If you believe the city will lose money on this?
I don't believe anything they say.
Okay.
But I do want to say, about a year and a half ago, the mayor came and asked a bunch of us to sign a letter to engage with a conversation with Amazon. I do a lot of work, as I mentioned, around criminal justice. I don't know if folks know, the number one thing to cut violent crime arrests in half in young people. Does anybody know what that is?
Jobs.
That is correct, 100%. So anytime I hear jobs, my ears perk up, and I want to listen. I had issues with Amazon before, some of the things they do with their workers and stuff like that, I was concerned. But I said I'm going to sign the letter anyway because I want to engage conversations about jobs. Perhaps we can use the power of New York City to change the way they operate. I've heard nothing from the mayor in a year and a half. Wake up and read the paper, and we've given them $3 billion. We've given them a helipad right next to Queensbridge, so sometimes it doesn't have heat. And we've given them away our land use ability. The mayor, who should be the first person defending New York City, gave Cuomo all the authority over land use without speaking to any elected officials at all. And so I see him shucking and jiving with the governor, which frustrated me because he couldn't do that to fix NYCHA and he couldn't do that to deal with the MTA. But for Amazon, Google gives us money.
You like that deal with Google?
Oh yes, Apple.
They're going to Hudson Yards.
Why would we have, by the way, they were trying to give Amazon pieces of Roosevelt Island to house their staff. Like, this was a terrible, terrible deal. Those 25,000 jobs, I don't even know if all those are gonna be ours. They're probably gonna bring some people with them, that's gonna account for that 25,000 jobs. And now they're lifting the housing prices of the area where, in Long Island City, they had Google employees who knew that we were come and purchase condos before the price went up.
Yeah.
All of this, there's nothing good about this. This needs to be scrapped and started all over again.
But the jobs aspect, is that real? You don't even think
We
that's
don't even know. And then,
But as much as you said that, you said the cutting on it with young people, they need jobs.
I agree. So I would say, just so you know, when I came in and started doing this work, I saw the police department had $5 billion, but we had 130 young people, 30,000 young people applying for summer youth jobs, and we only had 25,000 slots. Everybody said the young people are lazy, but they weren't, they were applying. Thanks to my leadership and others, I made it a priority. We now have 70 to 80,000 youth jobs every summer, and we're hoping to get to 100,000. So I'm focused on that. But those jobs probably not gonna be for the people who need it the most. Queensbridge is right there. If they're not having a training system to get those jobs, there's probably gonna be 150,000 jobs for people who have very high level of training. Those are not going to the people who necessarily we want to make sure get those jobs. Like, this is a terrible deal. There were 3 men in the room, Cuomo, Mayor, and I guess Bezos, maybe Alicia Glenn, and once again, they did all this stuff by themselves. But how do you have the Amazon come in, you don't speak to any unions, you don't speak to any grocery stores, you don't speak to any elected officials at all? This is the worst thing I've seen.
Thank you.
Stan.
Yeah, the Amazon deal. Why is it any different than what we do with the Yankees, what we do with the Mets, We build their we build their stadiums, and then we give them tax breaks. Isn't this, just to bring the revenue, the tax revenue into the city? Isn't this the same thing? We're gonna bring in tax revenue, we're gonna, employ a lot of people, and it's gonna bring, commerce and tax revenue here.
So, we need the most housing. That's probably what we need the most. We had no discussions with them about housing. When we go through ULURP, we usually extract affordable housing out of them. Two, Yankees never had a helipad. I don't know why they have. And three, Amazon and Bezos is literally the richest man in the world. Yankees is not. Why are we giving the richest man in the world $3 billion? Makes no sense to me. These folks want to come to New York City because of our
He
transportation.
made a good deal. Bezos is a
talent.
smart guy.
But we didn't have to be a part of that. And
We're gonna benefit, regardless of what
I don't know that
Bezos
that's
gets
true.
out of. The city will benefit from it in many ways. We'll have a infrastructure problem with housing and
We-
transportation, but in the long run, I
we
think
have,
we'll.
we haven't done anything with infrastructure. We
I
didn't ask
know.
them to do anything with infrastructure. There's,
Yeah.
those jobs, we're not even sure what they are. So half of them might not be even people from New York City. Might be people coming from other places who already work for Amazon. This deal is Amazon-centric. It is not New York City at all. I have no belief that this is gonna benefit us in the long run. It might benefit Amazon. It's raising housing prices already. This discussion should have happened with the local elected officials and people in New York City. It was horrible. That would have never happened with Yankee Stadium. The mayor, Bloomberg tried to do it with the Jet Stadium. He tried to do the same thing, go around ULURP, and they shut it down.
Alan, you had a question?
In regards to infrastructure, with all the building going on around the city, especially in our case, Long Island City, with luxury apartment buildings going up, the sewage pipes alone can't handle the amount of people. I mean, they're all infrastructure. Why is the city council allowing the mayor to make all these deals with developers when their infrastructure, and once again, MTA, sewage, whatever, can't handle the amount of people that want to move into the 5 boroughs? So why are they getting away with it?
Because infrastructure is not sexy. I talk about it all the time, and I'm, a public advocate, I'd love to raise it as a bigger issue. The infrastructure will be millions and millions of dollars, which we have to spend. But if you tell people we're spending $1 billion and we're gonna get, or even 5, 10, 15, $20 million, we're gonna get a bunch of new firehouses and a bunch of new police officers, everybody can see that. If you say we're gonna spend $15, $20 million to build a sewer, people can't see that. And so they start to zone out, especially if it's tough times. So you have to have some people who have the political courage to say, we gotta bite the bullet and build infrastructure. I am very concerned about the infrastructure of this city. You have pipes bursting all over the place. It's an old infrastructure. We have to invest. To be honest, investing in it may actually help in more than ways than one, because just like we did with the New Deal, I'm supporting the New Green Deal, but supporting those things also brings jobs. So you just have to have somebody that's pushing it. But we don't put enough pressure on the council. So these rezonings that happen all the time, sometimes we hear people make noise about the big rezonings, but there are small ones that happen every single month in the city council. There was 2 that happened today. Nobody's making noise about it. And so if nobody's putting pressure on folks, y'all know how elected officials are. And so we have to raise it. I mean, I don't support most of the rezonings that happen for various reasons, particularly around affordability. I think the zoning plan that the mayor put forth, we actually didn't have enough leadership last term in the speaker to put in the city council to push back. But infrastructure is a huge thing, and you don't see too many people talking about it. So people really have to make it a big issue. But most people are talking about what they can see.
So why don't you just put a moratorium on building new apartments of all kinds?
I want to put a moratorium on rezoning. I don't know about buildings, but I don't know if you can put a rezoning moratorium on building. We have to interject. Infrastructure is now not a discussion when they're building. We have to make it part. Usually they're talking about labor agreements and affordability of housing. They're never talking about infrastructure. That needs to be a part of the conversation. The third pay, nothing should be happening without discussion of infrastructure.
Take one last question. To Richie.
Thank you for
Hey,
coming to Brooklyn.
how are you?
Good to see you. We'll stamp your passport on the way
Thank
out.
you.
NYCHA's now gotten very sexy. I see Tish put it on her worst landlords. I remember reading back in the day, Village Voice had their list. Nobody had NYCHA on their list. One of our problems with homelessness and other things is this is our area of affordable housing. Money hasn't been there.
Affordable.
What would you do to
$400.
hold people's feet to the fire long before you put them on the list 10 years later?
For landlords in general or NYCHA specific?
NYCHA in particular.
So, we did put out a three-prong approach for deep income targeted housing. To begin with, one had to do with, we call it universal rent control, really dealing with rent regulation, which is up for negotiation next year. We also probably should reopen 421A, people may not forget what that is, but we're now giving developers more money, and we're getting less affordability. We're actually giving developers to build, we're giving them tax incentives to build market rate housing. The second had to do with land use. We're doing terrible things with land use, and I want to reopen something called mandatory inclusionary housing, which is the basis for all of the rezonings. And of course, with NYCHA, as I mentioned, there has to be investment in NYCHA. So we have to bite the bullet, and the state is supposed to be giving us money, and the city is supposed to be giving us money. That hasn't happened in a very long time. It's unfortunate, this is what happens. We're close to being in receivership. I mean, I don't think that's gonna be good because Ben Carson is a fallen hero of mine, and he knows nothing about housing, and he said poverty is a choice. So I have no faith in his ability to run a NYCHA system that is gonna work. So we have to invest in it. The mayor spent so much time in deception because there's more worried about the public perception. It's disgusting. My hope is now that we're gonna take real responsibility and see what's going on. There might be people who have to go to jail over what happened with NYCHA. They literally deceived and lied about lead study. It's remarkable what happened. With the worst landlord list, which is good, I think there needs to be more connectivity between the worst landlord list and HPD doing something about it. Because right now they're not synced up. Like there should be an agreement of what the worst landlord list is, and something should be done about it. Now we're at a place where people are paying attention, but it should happen long before. And I think we have to have a public advocate who is going to keep it on the spotlight and hold everybody's feet to the fire, and somebody who's not going to waver because it gets too hot politically. And if we don't get that money from someplace, we may have to explore some creative ideas of how to use NYCHA to raise some of that money.
One suggestion, Jumaane, is that anybody on the landlord list cannot make a contribution politically. I think that would help matters.
Oh, that's not, I like that, actually.
Mrs. Westbrook, you'll take the last question.
I have two questions. One, why are some housing developments in NYCHA fine? No one's complaining, no one's whining, everyone is peachy-dory.
'Cause they're
in
privately
those
managed.
complexes. Not all NYCHA is horrible. Some of NYCHA.
It's management, different
And so,
management.
The question is, why is that? When it's all NYCHA, it's all under New York City Housing Authority, why are some well-managed, or at least
Privately.
adequately managed, and the others where people are one step from living in the street? That's number one. Number two is why are people who need affordable housing, why is their rent based on
$1,100.
income they don't receive?
Right.
Meaning, why is their rent based on a gross amount of money that nobody gets? And I think supposedly, some deductions are taken from that. But I used to live in housing, and that's not so. I never received gross income. So why is the rent being charged at the gross amount a worker earns opposed to the net amount a worker?
I don't know the full answer to your first question because.
No, you don't have to answer it, but that's what I'm putting out there.
I don't know if it's just private management, because I have NYCHA in my district. It's not private management, and it's run fairly well. I think there's a whole host of issues, but I
Those
know
should be looked at then.
across the board, though it's not being managed well, and people, it's deteriorating rapidly. And the other one, those levels are set by HUD, so they're federal. There's not much that we can do about it.
Well, Ben Carson can do something about it.
You know, Ben.
So that's.
But what's even worse is that the area that's covered with area median income makes it really bad, because if you have, they count the poorest district in the Bronx with the richest district in Manhattan. And so that changes and rises the median income of the city. And it's a very bad formula that many folks have been trying to change for years, and we haven't had the ability to do it. One of the worst things that's annoying to me in this city, for folks who don't know, we have two different plans. We have a homelessness plan and we have a housing plan. We have a housing commissioner and we have a homelessness commissioner. We have a housing deputy mayor and a homelessness deputy mayor. The answer to homelessness is housing. So those plans should be together and it should be streamlined. I'm actually not sad that Deputy Mayor Alicia Glenn stepped down because her portfolio was failing. She was in charge of the housing plan, she was in charge of NYCHA, she was in charge of building housing, and it hasn't worked. And I'm hoping now, when we get a new deputy mayor, we streamline both plans, and that we don't pick a Goldman Sachs executive like Alicia Glenn. We pick someone who's used to dealing and building and fixing housing crisis and homelessness.
Okay, before I end it, I did promise Sam one last question. I always keep my word to him. So Sam, please, your last
Save me
question.
for last.
Councilmember, what's your opinion on BDS?
I've been at BDS. I abstained on the BDS vote that came to the city council. One, just so we're clear, it should never come to the city council, because the city council had a rule that we would not vote on any issues that were international. So we weren't allowed to vote on the Nigerian girls that were stolen, and we weren't allowed to deal on the vote on the Haitians of Dominican descent that citizenship was being ripped from them. So that was a political deal that I didn't like. We should have a consistent thing. But my issues, I can't say that I support BDS, and I told my Muslim friends that as well. But to my Jewish friends, sometimes they get frustrated. I'm a believer in Kingian nonviolence, so I don't know if I can support setting a law saying that people can't do something nonviolently to protest. And so that's the space that I'm in. I don't.
What's BDS?
Boycott, divestment, and sanctions. So it's a group of folks who have a nonviolent protest dealing with Israel. But I don't know that I don't support that, but I support people's right to do those kind of things. And so I can support a law banning it. I do know one thing. I'm sorry that I cannot solve the Middle East crisis. So there have been a lot of international people who have tried to do that. I realize that I cannot. I believe in a two-state solution, and I hope we get to that. And my hope is that we do that someday. I don't know that I can do it as a councilman. I don't think I can do it as a public advocate. And I'm not sure you want me to try.
We gotta fix our own problem.
It is an important issue.
Okay.
I don't know if that satisfies your answer, so I just want to make sure I answer.
Good answer.
Okay.
With that being said, Councilman, thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you so much.
Wish you the best of luck. If there's anybody here that wants to help out on his campaign, you can obviously email me, and obviously you can